Ever get that, like, heart-stopping feeling when you see IRS mail? We're tackling that dread head-on in this deep dive.
Oh, yeah.
Forget tax forms for now. We're talking about your rights as a taxpayer. Thanks to this little gem from the IRS itself.
Okay.
Your rights as a taxpayer.
It's like the IRS's best-kept secret.
Right.
Most people don't even know it exists.
Yeah.
Let alone how much it can empower them.
Okay, so no more feeling powerless.
Right.
This publication lays out 10 fundamental rights.
Wow.
10 that impact how you interact with the IRS.
Okay.
Let's dive into the first one. The right to be informed.
Right.
It sounds obvious, but what does that actually look like in practice?
Yeah, so imagine this. Instead of getting a letter drowning in tax jargon,
Oh, yeah.
you receive a clear,
Okay.
concise explanation about your tax situation.
Got it.
That's the power of the right to be informed.
Okay.
It's about getting clear, easy-to-understand information about tax laws, IRS procedures, and any decisions made about your account.
So it's about leveling the playing field and taking away that deer-in-the-headlights feeling many people get
Yes.
when dealing with tax issues.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It's about ensuring you're not lost in a sea of technical terms and legalese.
Right?
You have the right to understand what's happening and why.
It's like having a translator by your side, making sure you're not intimidated into just accepting whatever the IRS tells you.
Exactly. And speaking of feeling empowered, let's move on to another essential right,
Okay.
the right to quality service.
Okay. I'll admit, my heart sinks a little when I hear IRS and service in the same sentence.
I hear you. But here's the thing.
Yeah.
The IRS is obligated to provide you with prompt,
Okay.
courteous, and helpful assistance.
Okay, so no more endless hold music or dealing with rude representatives.
Ideally, no. And here's the kicker.
Okay.
If you're not getting the service you deserve,
Right.
you can actually request to speak with a supervisor.
Now, that's what I call a game changer.
There you go.
It's about having a voice and making sure it's heard. You're not just a number. You have the right to respectful and efficient service.
Right. And this focus on fairness and accuracy extends to the next right. The right to pay no more than the correct amount of tax.
That one seems like a given, doesn't it? I mean, who wants to overpay their taxes?
You'd be surprised how often mistakes happen.
Right.
But this right is all about ensuring you're only paying what you legally owe, no more, no less.
Right.
It also means the IRS should be applying your payments correctly and making sure any interest or penalties are accurate.
So it's about having that peace of mind, knowing that the numbers add up.
Yes.
And you're not being unfairly overcharged.
Absolutely. And it goes hand in hand with another important right.
Okay.
The right to challenge and be heard.
All right, let's talk about those what-if moments. What if you receive a tax bill and you're convinced it's wrong?
That's where the right to challenge comes in.
Okay.
You're not just stuck with whatever the IRS decides. You have the right to raise objections, present additional documentation, and make your case.
So you can push back, and the IRS has to actually listen.
Exactly.
Wow.
They're obligated to consider your objections fairly and provide a response, even if they ultimately disagree with your position.
That's reassuring. Knowing you have options and a voice can make all the difference in those potentially stressful situations. But what happens if, even after presenting your case, you're still not satisfied with the outcome?
Well, that's where the right to appeal comes into play.
Okay, so break that down for me. How does the right to appeal work?
Think of it as a safety net.
Okay.
A way to ensure that even if you disagree with the initial decision, you have recourse within the system.
Okay.
It allows you to take your case to a different level within the IRS, hoping for a different outcome.
So it's like having a second chance to plead your case, to present your side of the story to a fresh set of eyes.
Yes.
But what if this whole appeals process sounds intimidating? Are there resources available to guide taxpayers through it?
Absolutely. This is where IRS publications, specifically Publication 5 and Publication 556, come into play.
Okay.
They outline your appeal rights and walk you through the process.
They're like the instruction manuals for navigating the appeals process.
Exactly.
Making sure you understand the rules of the game.
Precisely. And they can be incredibly helpful in demystifying what might seem like a daunting process.
It's all about equipping yourself with the right tools and information. So instead of feeling lost and confused, you can confidently say, okay, here are my options, and this is how I can proceed.
Exactly. And knowing those options and exercising your rights can make all the difference in how you experience the tax system. Speaking of knowing your options, this publication also delves into some specific situations taxpayers might encounter, starting with the dreaded A-word audits.
Okay, let's talk audits. Just the word sends chills down my spine. But this publication does something really interesting. It challenges the assumption that being audited automatically means you're suspected of wrongdoing.
Exactly. It's like they're trying to demystify the audit process
Right.
and alleviate some of the fear surrounding it.
Yeah.
The publication emphasizes that being selected for an audit doesn't necessarily imply dishonesty.
Okay.
It could be triggered by a computer program flagging something,
Right.
inconsistencies with information from third-party sources,
Okay.
or even random selection.
So it's not always a red flag.
Right.
Sometimes it's just a routine check to ensure everything aligns.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like getting called in for jury duty.
Mm-hmm.
It's not personal. It's just part of the process.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And even if you are audited, it doesn't automatically mean you'll owe more taxes.
Okay.
The audit might conclude with no changes,
Okay.
or you might even receive a refund.
Okay, that's reassuring. So take a deep breath and remember, it's not the end of the world if you receive an audit notice.
Exactly. And remember, throughout the audit process, your rights are still protected.
Okay.
For instance, if you're selected for an in-person audit,
Right.
you have the right to request a convenient time and place for the interview.
That makes sense. You shouldn't have to rearrange your entire life to accommodate an audit.
Exactly. And speaking of accommodating,
Yeah.
the publication also encourages open communication with the IRS throughout the process, especially if you're facing a repeat audit for similar issues from previous years.
Okay.
It might be worth reaching out to discuss the matter and see if they'll reconsider.
So communication is key, even or perhaps especially when it comes to audits.
Yes.
But let's say you've gone through the audit process
Right.
and you disagree with the findings.
Okay.
That's where the right to appeal, which we discussed earlier, comes into play, right?
Precisely. The publication reminds taxpayers that they have the right to appeal audit findings
Okay.
to an independent office within the IRS. And importantly, it highlights that most disagreements can be resolved at this stage
Okay.
without resorting to costly and time-consuming court battles.
So it's like giving negotiation a try before heading into a full-blown legal showdown.
Exactly. It's about exploring all avenues for resolution within the IRS system first, which can save everyone time, money, and stress.
And just a reminder, for listeners who want to delve deeper into the appeals process, we mentioned earlier those two essential IRS publications, Publication 5 and Publication 556.
Yes.
They're like your guidebooks to navigating the world of tax appeals.
Absolutely. Knowledge is power, especially when it comes to dealing with the IRS.
Yeah.
And speaking of power dynamics, let's talk about collections.
Okay.
What happens if you do end up owing taxes?
Okay. Collections. This is where things can feel really intimidating for people.
Right.
What does the publication have to say about that?
It emphasizes that even in the collection process, your rights are still protected. They even dedicate an entire publication to this.
Wow.
Publication 594.
Okay.
The IRS collection process.
Right.
It outlines what to expect if you receive a tax bill,
Okay.
your rights,
And-
and your responsibilities.
So it's not a free-for-all where they can just seize your assets without warning?
Not at all. The IRS must follow specific procedures, and you have options.
Okay.
You can negotiate installment payments,
Okay.
request a delay in collection actions, or in cases of significant financial hardship, even submit an offer in compromise to settle the debt for a lower amount.
Wow. I had no idea there was that much flexibility within the collections process.
There is. And it's important to remember that the IRS is generally more interested in working with taxpayers to resolve tax liabilities than in resorting to extreme measures.
But it's good to know. It's not about punishing people. It's about finding workable solutions.
Exactly. It's about fairness and recognizing that life happens. People go through financial difficulties. Unexpected events occur, and the IRS is set up to navigate those complexities.
This is reminding me of something you mentioned earlier. The IRS obtaining information from third parties, like banks or employers.
Sure.
That sounds a bit unnerving.
Right.
Can you elaborate on that aspect?
Sure. While the IRS generally communicates directly with taxpayers or their authorized representatives, there are instances where they might need to reach out to third parties for information.
When might that happen?
It could happen if they need to verify information they already have, or if you haven't been able to provide certain documentation.
Okay.
For example, they might contact your employer to verify income information.
Right.
Or your bank to confirm account details.
That makes sense. But what are the limits?
Right?
Can they just ask those third parties anything about me?
Good question. The publication emphasizes that they're prohibited by law from disclosing more information than necessary.
Okay.
They might confirm your address with a neighbor,
Okay.
but they can't delve into your financial history or other sensitive details.
So there are safeguards in place to prevent the IRS from engaging in fishing expeditions
Right.
or unnecessarily airing your financial laundry out there for anyone to see.
Exactly. They can't just go around gossiping about your tax situation.
Right.
And to further ensure transparency, you have the right to request a list of individuals the IRS has contacted about your case.
So it's about accountability and ensuring that the IRS is using its power responsibly.
Precisely. They can't operate in the shadows. They have to be transparent about their actions and who they're contacting.
That's reassuring, especially for those who might feel apprehensive about the IRS having so much reach.
It is. And this commitment to transparency extends even further when it comes to refunds.
Yes. Refunds music to every taxpayer's ears.
Here you go.
This publication reminds us that we have the right to file a claim for a refund if we believe we've overpaid our taxes. But what's the time frame for doing that?
Right.
I'm sure some people are kicking themselves thinking about missed opportunities.
Yeah.
Is there...
Don't worry. There's still hope.
Okay.
You typically have 3 years from the date you filed your original return.
Okay.
Or 2 years from the date you paid the tax.
Okay.
Whichever is later to file that claim.
So even if a few years have slipped by, it's worth checking to see if you're still eligible for a refund.
Absolutely. And here's a bonus. If the IRS doesn't issue your refund within 45 days of receiving your return or claim, you're generally entitled to interest on that refund.
It's like they're paying you for the inconvenience of making you wait.
There you go.
Now, that's something I can get behind.
Right.
But what about people who haven't even filed a return yet, but think they might be owed a refund?
Okay. Yeah.
Is there still time to claim it?
Yes, but the window is a bit tighter.
Okay.
You generally have 3 years from the original filing deadline to submit your return and claim that refund.
So don't delay. File today.
Yeah.
You never know. You might be sitting on a nice little windfall.
Exactly. It's always worth looking into, even if you think you might have missed the boat.
Yeah.
But sometimes navigating these complexities, especially if you're dealing with a particularly challenging tax situation, can feel overwhelming.
Oh, yeah.
That's why I want to reiterate the importance of the Taxpayer Advocate Service, which we touched on earlier.
Yes. The tax superheroes, as I like to call them.
There you go.
They're like a secret weapon for taxpayers in need.
They really are. They're an independent organization within the IRS.
Okay.
And they're there to protect your rights, especially if you're facing a tax problem causing you significant hardship.
Right.
Or if you've tried unsuccessfully to resolve an issue with the IRS through the usual channels.
So they're like the cavalry riding in to save the day when you're feeling lost and alone in the tax wilderness.
That's a great way to put it. Their assistance is always free. And if you qualify, they'll do everything in their power to help you navigate the system and resolve your tax issues fairly and efficiently.
It's amazing to know there's a dedicated ally like that within the IRS.
Right.
Looking out for taxpayers.
It really speaks to the IRS's commitment to fairness and ensuring everyone has access to the resources they need.
Absolutely. Now, before we wrap up our deep dive into taxpayer rights, we need to address one last crucial concept. The right to finality.
Ah, yes, finality.
Yes.
The idea that tax matters shouldn't drag on indefinitely. It's like putting a period at the end of a very long sentence.
I like that analogy. It's about having closure and certainty in tax matters. But tell me, how does this right play out in real life?
It's a two-way street impacting both taxpayers and the IRS.
Okay.
On the one hand, taxpayers have the right to know how much time they have to challenge an IRS decision or file a claim for a refund. They also have the right to know the maximum amount of time the IRS has to audit a specific tax year.
Okay.
Or collect a debt.
So it's about setting clear boundaries and timelines, preventing those scenarios where a tax issue lingers for years on end.
Exactly. It prevents unnecessary stress and anxiety, allowing taxpayers to move forward with their lives. On the flip side, the IRS is also bound by these time limits.
Okay.
They can't keep a tax year open indefinitely, hoping to find something amiss.
Right.
And once an audit is complete, they're required to inform you,
Okay.
providing a sense of closure.
That's a relief. Knowing there's a light at the end of the tunnel can make all the difference.
Absolutely. It brings us back to the overarching theme of fairness and transparency in the tax system, which this entire publication emphasizes.
It's really incredible how much valuable information is packed into this single document.
I know, it's great.
And speaking of valuable resources,
Yes.
the publication goes above and beyond by providing contact information
It does.
for various avenues of assistance for taxpayers.
It's like a one-stop shop for taxpayer support.
Yeah.
Need the IRS's toll-free number for tax questions. It's there.
Right.
Looking for specific forms or publications. They've got you covered. Want to explore resources for small businesses.
Yeah.
Check out the contact information for this small business ombudsman.
And let's not forget the Treasury Inspector General for Tax Administration.
Right.
Your direct line to report any misconduct or issues encountered within the IRS.
Yes.
They really have thought of everything.
They have. It underscores their commitment to ensuring the system works as intended.
Yeah.
They're giving taxpayers a voice and encouraging them to use it.
It's about shifting the dynamic from fear and uncertainty to knowledge and empowerment.
Yes.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into your rights as a taxpayer,
Okay.
what's the key message you want our listeners to take away?
That they have more power than they might think. The tax system can feel daunting.
It can.
But armed with knowledge of their rights and the resources available,
Right.
taxpayers can navigate it confidently and successfully.
Beautifully said. Knowing your rights is like having a secret weapon.
Yes.
And this publication is the key to unlocking it.
It is.
So the next time you interact with the IRS, remember, you have rights. Don't be afraid to advocate for yourself, ask questions, and seek assistance when needed.
Absolutely. And remember, this episode is just a starting point.
Right.
Dive into the source material yourself. You might be surprised by what you discover.
And who knows? You might just become your own tax-savvy advocate. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and most importantly, keep diving deep.